calling from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Sam, this is Ronald Reagan.
There you go. There's. I'm sorry.
Shout
I
out to the J-Man.
Did not ask John about your thing. I'm glad.
My favorite part of the John call is usually the shout out to another podcast. I'm sad that he didn't do that this time.
Well, that's you can't.
It is pretty great. It's just like I would use a different model set. I'd also listen to the polling report on this new another podcast that just launched. That's actually probably more valuable.
But wait a second. Yeah, yes, Ronald Reagan. Let's. I wanted to talk to you about this for a couple of reasons. One, I got a report from a Fox 19 report from Fairfield, Ohio. I want you to listen to.
Okay.
For people who don't know, Ronald Reagan is an immigration lawyer on the West Coast. But here is a report. This is from Fairfield, Ohio. This is from last week. By this point, the woman who is being discussed has probably already been deported. But here is Fox 19 reporting, speaking to the son of Maribel Trujillo. And here is the report from Ohio.
I was in shock. I didn't really want to tell my siblings because they were just watching TV. And
to protect the family, he didn't want to show his face. Now, he took us down the road where his mother was last seen. She was walking to work when she was arrested. Maribel doesn't have a criminal record and reportedly had a work permit which didn't expire until July. She met with Immigration monthly. The 14-year-old tells us they were blindsided by the arrest on Wednesday.
It's been awful. My dad has sometimes like these episodes of just sitting and crying. Because I feel like it's been affecting him the most.
Maribel and her husband have been married 15 years and have 4 children. The couple came to the U.S. in 2002 to flee violence from Mexican cartels. Along with making a home here in Fairfield, they also spent a lot of time in a church. Now their priest is rallying behind them in hopes to keep the family together.
And this is a death, but it's a slow death. The worst part about it is that she was taken off the street. They never had a chance to really talk to her. It just happened so quickly.
The public affairs officer for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says in 2014, the Board of Immigration Appeals dismissed her legal appeals and she became subject to a final order of deportation. Now Maribel's family is worried about what the future holds.
They ended up taking her. My dad said we might as well just move over there to Mexico, which is weird because I've never been to Mexico. This is basically my home.
Yeah, he's never. The child has never even been to Mexico. So,
yeah,
Ronald Reagan, this comports with what you had emailed or texted me the other day about what your experience has been as an immigration lawyer. You're seeing a dramatic change in policy by ICE. Is that right?
Yeah. So this happened on Friday. I got a memo from ICE litigation, and it's funny because Secretary of Homeland Security John Kelly was on the Sunday show saying nothing's changed. We're just going after criminal aliens. But one of the things that the Trump memos did back in February was expand the definition of criminal alien to include people that ICE thinks might have committed a crime. And so there's I don't want to get too wonky with it, but there's, for people who are in removal proceedings or they're in the process of going to court and having the judge decide if they can stay or not, for a lot of them, they might qualify for papers going through some other channel. And in the past, ICE has been willing to sort of work with us and allow that person to go about doing that. And on Friday, I got a memo from ICE opposing my motion to close this case because this guy's got a wife and kids, and he can get his green card pretty easily. But they're opposing the motion because and part of their reasoning is that he entered illegally, which technically could be a misdemeanor. And so because he committed the acts that constitute a misdemeanor, he's therefore a criminal alien and therefore a priority, an enforcement priority for them. And so, and the trial attorney actually emailed me and said this is coming down from headquarters or whatever as of a couple of days ago. So they're officially taking a position against people who their only crime they might not have any crimes on their records, but they entered without inspection or they entered without proper documentation. They're saying that those are criminal aliens. And in this case, the difference, to be clear, the difference is this guy can either have his case closed as a matter of discretion and he can spend 10 days in Mexico getting his green card, or if ICE has their way, he'll now have to spend over a year in Mexico processing the paperwork. It gets kind of technical, but the point is it's purely punitive. This is a guy who can get his papers, and if they are willing to just meet us halfway, he can do it with minimal separation from his family. But if they're not, ultimately it's up to the judge, but ICE is taking the position that no, this person should go back and should have to do it the hard way, because I don't even know what the because is. This is purely Jeff Sessions being a racist, being punitive against immigrants because they can.
And let's be clear about one other thing too. In this instance, right? This is clearly. There's somebody here who is eligible through a different process, and they're just making it harder. They're just being spiteful, really. But the broader policy change means more or less what people have been talking about without sort of like the specifics, which is that instead of going after criminals, people who have actually committed a crime, a felony, because what people need to remember is that if you overstay your visa or if you cross into this country without proper documentation, that has always been the functional equivalent of essentially a speeding ticket. It's been a civil violation as opposed to a criminal one. And now essentially they're saying it is a criminal violation. You have the same, I guess, priority for ICE as someone who has shot somebody.
Right. What I understand is in, I think, 2005, Congress passed they did make it a misdemeanor. I don't think it's ever been prosecuted in criminal court. So that's what they're using is, there's a law in the books that makes this a misdemeanor. Nobody's ever been charged with it, but, you've committed those acts, and that makes you a criminal alien. And, one of the problems is, I'm a open borders lefty, but there are people in removal proceedings who have, serious crimes on their record. And right now, in a lot of the courts, well, first of all, there's over 500,000 cases in removal proceedings, and there's only 300 immigration judges. So the hearings are being pushed out to 2020, 2021. It's crazy. The backlogs. I've gone to court. Last year I went to court probably 4 or 5 times, and the judge just no-showed because they probably took a sick day, and then the hearing got bumped another 2 years. And so what they were doing under Obama is administratively closing or taking a bunch of cases off the calendar that were low priority. Some dude who's got a bunch of kids and maybe he's got one old crime, but it's not that big of a deal, driving without a license or whatever. And they were taking those cases off the docket with the hopes of alleviating the backlog. And now what they're doing is saying, everyone's a priority. We're not going to close anything. And the result is that the people who do have, fairly serious criminal issues end up swimming in the same pool as the single mom with no criminal history. And it turns into sort of a de facto amnesty in a way because, if somebody ends up in removal proceedings, you can say, well, you're not going to be deported for 6 or 7 years. Now they're trying to hire more judges and do that sort of thing. But
and what are they doing with detention centers? They're building these. I know they've just opened a new one in Texas. Are those detention centers, to your knowledge, exclusively for people who are coming across the border without documentation, or are they contemplating if you're? I mean, can they put people in detention centers as they're awaiting these hearings?
Yeah, they can. They're probably, from what I understand, they're trying to focus on border crossers or people seeking asylum. So a lot of people under Obama came to the border, requested asylum, and they were paroled in. They were allowed to come in and stay with family while they were placed in removal proceedings. And what they want to do is detain all those people as a deterrent so that, some El Salvadorian mother who's being, beaten to death by her partner thinks twice about coming to the United States to seek asylum because she knows that she'll have to be detained for 6 to 12 months while she fights her asylum case. And actually one of the things that they're doing, which is, again, just asinine, is they're shuffling around the judges that they do have. So I had, again, 2 or 3 hearings in these couple of months where we're preparing for the final hearing, and we get new hearing notices for 2020 because they're sending all the judges down to the border to try and deport those people faster. But they could, they could build detention centers for virtually everyone. Now, there's a process for requesting bond to get them out, but in Tacoma, there's a detention center in Tacoma for immigrants, and the bonds have just gotten progressively higher ever since I've practiced. And so, somebody who makes $26,000 a year as a farm worker could easily get a $10,000 cash bond that they have to pay to get out. And if they don't, then they have to fight their case detained. And I've seen a lot of people walk away from good removal defenses because, they're looking at an 8-month wait in jail or in detention. And so, the whole thing sucks pretty much. But I think it is, that was sort of getting this memo from ICE on Friday and hearing that it was a directive from above was the first indication I'd seen that they're just going to take this position that everyone is a priority. And so it's going to be, stuff like that, the stories that you hear on the news, and it's going to become really, really common. One thing I think will be interesting, this is an agricultural area, and it'll be interesting to see what happens when, they come up against the economic interests of this area, because all these farmers who had giant Trump signs in their acres and acres of land are now realizing, I kind of needed that guy who's worked here for 20 years.
That's going to be, I think, that's going to be that's the question. I had this conversation with somebody, I think, over the weekend, was, will there be a moment where there's enough people who say, hey, wait a second, I thought it was going to happen to those other people, not to the guy who owns the restaurant that I've known for 15 years, or the guys who are coming, the families are coming to, pick my orchards or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I wonder if there will end up being some type of political sensitivity on the part of ICE that they will go for maybe, I don't know, less people they perceive who are, maybe not small business owners. That is really the question, I guess, going forward. But who knows? Yeah. Who knows?
That's always been my favorite example of white privilege, and we see it all the time. Any immigration lawyer will tell you, it's really common for these white people to come in for a consultation with their Latino. This is Maria. She cleans my house really well, so I'm here to use my white powers to get her a green card. And we have to tell them, there's no such thing as a white power green card. But it happens all the time with farmers and ranchers. This guy's been working for me for 20 years. I still pay him $10 an hour, by the way. But, why can't I exercise my patriotism to get him a green card? And it's that's not a thing.
Hey, folks, Sam Seder here. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses. And one way he can is by you subscribing to this channel. I don't know how that works.